Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, I just wanted to go over how to move this dropdown right here into a reusable component. We're gonna, even if you didn't watch the other two videos, you can still follow along with this. It'll be the same concept. Everything will be the same, except the styling might be a little bit different for you. You might have to change that up, but other than that, it'll all be the same. Um, so before we get started, we have these couple packages installed. We have tailwind merge and CLSX, and we're just creating a CN function so we can override styles and make sure there's no conflicting styles whenever we do. So if you don't have those installed, go ahead and install them. It'll be just npm install or yarn install, whatever you're using. Tailwind merge, CLSX. They're already installed, so it installed instantly for me. But so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So first, we're gonna go ahead and create a new folder, and I'm gonna call it UI, and then we're gonna name this dropdown here, dropdown.tsx. And it's going to be a use client since we're using nextjs. And then to start this off, we're going to go ahead and define an interface here, because we're going to be using useContext, open dropdown. This will be a function that returns void, and close dropdown. Same thing as the other. We're going to go down here, and we're going to go ahead and export const dropdown context, which is going to be equal to create context. And we're going to import that from React. Open up pipes, and this can be a type dropdown context type, the interface we just made here, or undefined, and it's gonna default to undefined. And then we're gonna go ahead and create the provider. So we'll say export const dropdown provider, which is gonna take in the children, and it's gonna be of type react.react node. Arrow function here. And then we're gonna say dropdown open, set dropdown open, and we're gonna import useState here, which is gonna default to false. And I forgot to put react node here. And then we're gonna make a ref, so dropdown ref, which is equal to useRef. Import that from React as well. And that's gonna be an HTML div element or null, and it's gonna default to null. And then we're gonna go ahead and create the function here. So open dropdown, it's gonna be an arrow function, just gonna keep it in line. I'll be setting dropdown to open. And then same thing with, I'm just gonna go ahead and copy paste this down, because this will just be the opposite. It'll be close dropdown, which will be false, not capital. False. And then in our theme switch here, we have a hook that closes the modal or the drop down if you click outside of it. So we're gonna go ahead and move that over here. So take this use effect here, import use effect, and then instead of set drop down, we're just gonna say set drop down open. And then create a context value here, and it's gonna be a type drop down context type, which is gonna be open an object here, and we're gonna say is open. There's actually a couple things I want to do before I add this. So in our props up here, instead of just taking the children, we're also going to add a couple more things. I'm going to say open and set open. And then this is going to be of type open, which would be optional, and that'll be a boolean, and set open, which is going to be also optional, and it's going to be of type react. Let me wrap this. React dot dispatch, and inside that, open angle brackets again, and it'll be of type. And inside that, we'll do react dot set state action, which is going to open more brackets, and we're going to say boolean. So again, close that, hit save. And we're going to do this because we want to be able to allow the user to, we're going to do that so that the user can have full control over opening and closing the dropdown if they want to override it. Like say they wanted a button here that also says close, and then it would give them access to be able to close that. You can also add it into your props, but I prefer the way that Shadcn kind of does it, where we're kind of taking like the same concept where they use radix and gives the user full control over all of that, but we're not going to be using radix or anything like that. And I just wanted to show this because this is kind of how it's going to look. We'll have like a drop trigger here, and content, item, all that. But yeah. So because these are optional, is open, we're gonna, or because this is optional open and set open, we're not always gonna take in that. So we're gonna say const is open, not capitals. We're gonna say const is open, which is equal to open. If it's not undefined, then we'll take the open. If it is undefined, then we'll use our default state here. And we'll do the same thing for set is open. So set open, if it's not equal to undefined, then we'll take set open. Otherwise, we're going to use set dropdown open. And then inside of our context value here again, we're going to do open dropdown and close dropdown. We're going to hit save on that. And then right below this, we're going to go ahead and create our provider here, which is going to be dropdown context dot provider. And inside of here, we're going to take another div actually, because we can't pass a ref to the provider itself. So we're going to take a div that wraps the children and add that ref there. And then on top of this, we'll just add class relative. And then the value, or a context provider always needs a value. And we already defined what we're going to put here. So we're going to say context value here. Actually, before we do that, we're going to go up here and create a reusable hook so that we can get access to the context and we don't have to pull in the context no matter where we go. And I'll show why we're doing that in a bit. But we're going to go ahead and say export function use dropdown. And we're going to say context is equal to use context, which comes from React, and it's type of dropdown context, which we defined right here. And then we're going to say if there is no context, then we're going to go ahead and throw a new error. Dropdown context must be used within a dropdown provider. And then right below that, we'll go ahead and return the context. So now we have access to that anywhere. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our first component, which will be the dropdown trigger. And we're going to import forward ref. And we're going to put a forward ref on here just so the user is free to basically add anything they want to the components. So we're going to add for ref HTML button element. That's going to be take in children, which is going to be a type react.react node. And then I'll also take in class name, which will be an optional string. Then we'll go ahead and close off this bracket here. Not node. We'll close off this bracket here. Double parentheses, and then we're going to destructure the children and the class name here. And then we'll also spread in the props, which so they can add. So the user or you, not the user. So you can add any of the div elements to it. And I'm going to turn back on road wrap. And right outside this bracket here, we're going to add the ref here. And then right inside of this last parenthesis, arrow function, open brackets. And this is where first we'll go ahead and return. And above the return, we're going to use our hook here that we created. Just use dropdown. So we'll const open brackets because we're going to destructure it. And then we'll just say use dropdown. And then inside of here, because it's all type safe, we can close dropdown is open dropdown. And this is giving an error right now because we also don't have a display name, but we'll get to that in 1 second. Add a button, not a Bluetooth icon, a button. It's going to take the ref, type ref, on click, and the on click here is going to be if it's open, then we'll close the dropdown. Otherwise, we'll open the dropdown. And then inside of here, we'll just take the children. Back up here, we'll say class name. And our class name is we're gonna import the cn function here. And we'll just, because we're only using it for this, where we're putting an icon here, we're just gonna go ahead and say bg transparent, border none, ring 0, rounded md, text primary. And then outside of that, we'll say class name. And then we're also just gonna spread in the props here. I'm actually surprised this isn't complaining about a display name here, but we're gonna go ahead and do that. So we'll say dropdown trigger dot display name is equal to dropdown trigger. Alright, and let's go ahead and go to the next. So we'll say const dropdown header. It's going to be again forward ref. That's going to be a type HTML paragraph element. It's going to take in children. So it's react.react node. And this will also take in a class name optionally, so you can override the styles on it. And that'll be of type string. Close off this bracket here, double parentheses, and then we'll go ahead and destructure the children, class name, spread in the props, and then right outside this, we'll say ref. It'll just be the same thing as before. Return a p with a ref, class name, same thing, cn function. It'll be text base, font semi-bold. Take in all the props, and we'll say children here. And we're going to do do same thing. Drop down header dot display name is equal to, and I'm gonna go ahead and include this here. We'll export the drop down trigger and the drop down header. And we'll just add to this as we add more components. So now we're gonna go ahead and do we need, since this is the header, this is like where this would go. And now we're gonna add a label. So you can add mode, color, and you can always add anything you want to it, including props, or just more components if you want. That's why I like doing it like this. It gives gives full control over what you want. So we'll do forward. Instead of typing all this out again, I'm just gonna go ahead and copy and paste the header here. We're gonna go ahead and copy the header here, and we'll just rename this to drop down label. And this will be, instead of paragraph element, we're gonna do div element again. And then this is just gonna be a div. Oh no, sorry. Delete that. We're gonna go back to, it's gonna be a paragraph as well. I was thinking it was a different part. My bad. Alright, so this would just be text small, font semi-bold still, and yeah, everything about this one would just be the same. Alright, so now we're gonna copy and paste this again, and we're gonna call this drop down item, and now it's gonna be a div element. And we're gonna turn this into a div. And for the items, if we look back what we did here, we just for each thing we're creating an items here, and it's a grid calls 3 with full gap 3. So we'll go ahead and add that here. Get rid of these classes here. We'll go grid calls 3, gap 3, and then we're gonna add a margin top of 3. And then we're gonna go ahead and do add these to the display names as well. So we'll do drop down label dot display name, and then drop down item dot display name, and we're gonna also export these as well. So drop down label and drop down item here. Now for this one, we're gonna add more props so the user has more control, and we'll kind of go over that whenever we add it to our page, or whenever we move our theme switcher over here. So we'll go ahead and say const drop. We have an error up here actually. That's why. We need this outside of it. Okay. So we'll call this drop down content. Actually, we're gonna go ahead and copy and paste again, and then we'll rename it because it's a little bit annoying to write forward ref content. And that error earlier is why it wasn't showing an error for not having a display name. So we'll go ahead and add that here just to get rid of it. All right. Save this, just shared formats. Now we're gonna add more props to this. So let's see. We have class name, we have children, class name. Then after class name, we're gonna call it side offset, which is optional, and it'll be a number. And then we'll do side, which is also optional, and we'll call this left or right. You can also define this in like a type or a props up here, but I'm just going to do it all inline right now. Completely up to you. We'll go ahead and do align. And align is going to be either top or bottom. And these are just representing what we're going to do because this is absolutely positioned. And we want to we want to be able to have full control if we want to position something on the, like say, it comes from the bottom, so it goes up, or the top. And that's the only reason why I'm doing this. And then we'll go ahead and add a line offset, which is also a number. And make sure you have a comma there. And we'll also pass these in. Align offset, side offset, comma here. And we're gonna go ahead and give these a default. So we'll default this to a top. So if it's not specified in the props, whenever you do it, it'll just default to the top. And then we'll go ahead and have a line offset. I'll just set that to auto. And a side, we'll default that to right. And then the side offset, we'll go ahead and default that to -4, because I believe that's what we use. Actually, we use the 0, but oops, wrong one. So if we did -4, it'd move it over a little bit. And I kind of like that. But you can default that to 0 if you want. Okay. Also, inside of here, we're gonna go ahead and get the isOpen hook, and that's gonna come from use dropdown, and that's why we created the reusable hook up here earlier. So we don't have to keep importing the context, and oops, we don't have to keep doing this, where you take context, throw an error, return the context, and then break it down into parts. That's essentially how it would look if you had to redo it every single time. And then if you wanted to use the states in, like, say over here, or you wanted to put it into your navbar, you would have to import the context and do the same thing over and over. So this just makes it simpler. Alright. So inside of here, we're going to change all these styles. So inside of here, we're going to do div, which can be absolute, transition all, z of 60, ease in out, because we're actually going to be adding a proper animation to this instead of it just popping up like this now. So we'll say duration of 200, top of auto. Wait, we actually don't need the top or the auto. Do width 350 pixels, BG of secondary. And if you didn't do anything with the theme provider earlier, or from my other video, you're gonna have to change this because we set this up in a global CSS here. So you have to set that to whatever you want, but it's gonna be like that throughout. If there's any styles that don't work or you're not sure of, that's all it is. So we'll set border. That'll be a border of accent. P3 rounded MD. Overflow of hidden. I'm gonna go to the next line and we'll say is open, which is why we grabbed this here. So if it's open, we'll do a scale of 100 and an opacity of 100. Otherwise, it'll be scale 0 and opacity 0. And bring that back one line. Hit save on this. And then outside of here, we're going to do a style. Because tailwind doesn't work on at build time, So we have to actually assign the styles, which is why we created this here. So we'll do top. So if align is equal to top, then we'll do align offset. Otherwise, it's just going to be auto. And we'll do the same thing for bottom. If align is equal to bottom, then we'll do the align offset. Otherwise, we'll just do auto. And we'll do the same thing for right, but it'll be side instead. So we'll do if right, we'll do side offset, otherwise auto, and just copy paste this down, change this to left, and change this to left. And I'm going to cut these children, and I'm going to add another div here, and then I'm going to wrap the children inside of this, because we're going to add another class name here, which is cn function again, and we'll do flex, we'll do flex call, space yf3, and then comma, class name. And that pretty much is all we need for the dropdown here. And I believe we already created a display name for this and exported it. We did not export it. So we'll export the dropdown content here. Now, one other thing before we move on, I'm going to clean this up just a tad bit. So I'm going to actually take the interface here, the context, and this reusable hook. And then I'm also going to take the provider here, and I'm just going to move this all into a separate file. So inside the, actually outside the components, inside the source folder, I'm going to create a folder named context. And this is just showing how I would normally separate all my stuff, so it's a little bit cleaner. So we'll just call this use dropdown because that's the hook we made, and we'll call it .tsx. And we're gonna go ahead and import this, and then go ahead and import everything we need: the use state, the use ref, the use effect, the use context, and create context. Not from VM. I don't know why I didn't import it from there. Make sure that comes from React. Hit save here, and then I'm gonna import the use dropdown hook. Yeah. And then I'm gonna Shift Alt O to remove all unused imports here, and then go ahead and hit save. And then from here, we're gonna move this into its into a component using all these wrappers for it with a context. So what I'll usually do is I copy and paste, so I don't lose anything in case I need to reference back. I don't think we would in this case, but I'll go ahead and inside components here, and I'll just call it theme switch.tsx, and I'll go ahead and import that. And then we're gonna rename this to theme switch. And I think that's the only place we need it. Yep. Hit save, and then I'm gonna go back to the nav bar here. I'm gonna remove the theme switcher because we want to look at what we're putting in there now. Make sure nothing goes wrong. Not the theme switcher. I don't know why I did that again. Theme switch. Import that. Alt Shift O to remove the unused imports. And nothing would change because it's all still in the same file. Go ahead and hit save. And inside the theme switch, I'm just gonna go ahead and start by I'm just gonna go ahead and clear everything out. And we'll copy and paste from the theme switcher if we need, which I believe we'll do. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear all of this out. And we'll return. So we still have the themes here, which we'll still need that. inside here, we're gonna go ahead and take the mount it and set mount it. And then we're gonna do the same thing that we did here. We'll take the mode, which gets it from the local storage. Actually, we're gonna just copy and paste all of this down. Copy and take that. I'm gonna get rid of everything we're not using in here, just so I can clean up this file. So we'll say const theme, set theme is from use theme. We're gonna take, we don't need the dropdown ref because we included that in our reusable component here. So we'll go ahead and say we'll take the use effect here. The next use effect, the handle mode change. We don't need the handle click outside. We put that inside of our reusable component there too. So we'll go ahead and take the use effect here, import all that, or copy and paste that. And I didn't grab the whole use effect. I don't know why I did that. I'm gonna control Z. Let me redo that. Okay, got rid of that. Let me go back. Right below the theme. We'll go ahead and take the use effect. This use effect, the handle mode change. I'll just copy and paste down, but I'll get rid of the other hook. So we'll go ahead and do this, and then we're gonna get rid of this use effect. That is the click outside. And I believe that's everything we'll need for this. Yes. So now, we're gonna go ahead in here, and this is where we're gonna rep the provider. So we're gonna import from context, use dropdown, our provider, and we'll go ahead and take the dropdown trigger. So we'll go ahead and take the trigger here. Then we'll take the paintbrush, which we have class name text accent here. I'm also going to go ahead and hit save on this. So now you can see it's still there. But we'll do, after the trigger, you saw we needed drop down content, which is going to come from the UI content. Everything should actually be from the UI content, or UI dropdown, sorry, besides the provider. So I'll take our dropdown header, which is going to be customized theme. And then below the header, we'll do our first dropdown label, which is going to be mode. I forgot to import that. Then we'll go ahead and do dropdown item. So we'll go ahead and import that. And if you wanted to, you could be more specific and like create a group that would wrap your label and your items. But for this use case, I think it's simple enough that we can just keep our label and then put a label for every item. And the whole purpose of making it like this is so basically, instead of like passing down a drop down and then adding a bunch of props, so it'd be like title, description, label, all these props, and it would get messy. This makes it more makes it easier to just keep things clean. Anyways, so we don't want mode inside the item. Inside the item here, that's where we're gonna take our buttons here. We have two buttons that control the light and dark mode. So we'll go ahead and put those inside of here. Hit save. and now it should still work. And I'm guessing I messed up something in here. Yep, I spelled grid wrong again. There we go. And then below this item here, we're just going to do the same thing again. My auto suggest did it perfectly. We'll take the theme, or not the theme, sorry, it didn't do it perfectly. We'll do colors, and then inside here we'll do another drop down item. And inside of this item, we're going to go ahead and take our mapped over function here. So our theme, and then that's pretty much it for this. I'm going to go ahead and delete this theme switch file. Actually, I'm going to keep it. We're not going to be using it. I would delete it if I'm just going to keep it for the GitHub. But so I'm going to control Z on everything to bring it back. You don't have to do that. But anyways, so yeah, these are, actually I haven't gone over the props, but this is a really clean way to make reusable components like this. So if we wanted to add more to it, you could. You could also add more props, like let's say label, another one. And now we have this, and same thing, drop down item. Or if you had a list of things, you could map over it and be able to create things like that. Or content. Well, because we have this in a grid. But again, you can actually just override this too. You can make this a flex wrap, more content. Make sure I imported this in. Yep. Okay, so that one actually didn't override. So, because I forgot to add this. Actually, I forgot to add this on a few things. I'm sorry about that. So we'll add class name to the back of this, class name here, and we don't want to add class name to this because this is the whole wrapper of it. We want to add class name here. Okay, my bad about that. I forgot to add that. Don't need that. But yeah, so you kind of get the point. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this item and this label, and I'll show why we added this part right here. Am I in the wrong file? I am in the wrong file. This is why to our provider here, we added, oops. So there's actually one more thing I forgot here. Set. So we actually want to change this to set is open, and then this will also take the set is open. This is in our use dropdown, and we do this so we can actually override the state control. And if you didn't do that, it wouldn't work if the user passed in their own state. So let's say I wanted to have another state. I want to call it open set, say menu open set menu, if I can type, open, which is going to be use state. I will say that's false. So now inside of here, so let's say menu open, set menu open. So add open, menu open, and set menu open, and now it would work the same way. No, it won't, because I forgot one more thing here. So instead of setting the dropdown now, we would actually take this. I'm going to put this below. So in our use dropdown here, instead of setting the dropdown, what we're going to do is set is open. So now you can see we add it now, and the user has full control. So if they wanted to add another button here in our theme switch, let's just say we wanted another drop-down item, and then inside of here, we'll just add another button. We'll say on click, set menu open false, the same way you control anything else, and we'll just call this close. Add a little style here. Border, rounded MD, and nothing else. So we just have a close button here. Again, you can override anything in here. And now we hit close, and now you have external control. Or I don't know if external control is the word, but now you have direct control. But I'm gonna go ahead and remove that, and you can see if we remove this open and set open, it'll still work because it's defaulted to it. And then, so let's say inside the content here, we want to go ahead and we want to switch the side. We want to say it's on the left. So now it's on the left. Well, in this case, it's not exactly the best example because now we have an overflow. But let's say the button was over here, it'd just be moved. And that's really it. It just gives more control. So we'll say left. And let's say we want to do side offset. Let's say we want to say side offset -30. -40. Or let's say regular 40, actually just 40. It moves even further. So we'll say -100. And now it's far enough over, but let's switch the side back. If we go -100, if we go 40 here, now it's all the way over here. Just gives full control over your components. And then you can take the same component, move it to another part of your app. Maybe you want it in the inside the about page. You want it in there. So inside this about page here, say drop down provider, drop down trigger, and this will just be a button. Actually, we don't need a button because it's already a button. So we'll say click or open. That'd be drop down content. I believe that's what we're doing here. Drop down content, yeah. Then inside of here, we'd want drop down header. Import that. Testing. Drop down. Label. First test. Drop down. Item. This is another display of the dropdown. Now, because this is using the divider, we have to create we have to make this use client too. Otherwise you'd get that error. And because this is grid, we don't want that. Let's just say, let's be a block. So yeah. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I encourage you to try this out on your own. Maybe add more, maybe you want to add more props to it. Maybe you want to make it a multi-step drop down, so the user can have a button here that will say next or left or previous something there. Or maybe you have a form in there. There's all kinds of things you could add, but yeah, I just challenge you to make more props, get a feel for it. You can use Shadcn as an example. We're not using radix, we're creating the components from scratch and all that, but it's the same concept. So you look at how they do it. Maybe add a sub menu like they do, or like he does here, or you can create sub menus like this to make it a little bit more advanced. Obviously in this use case, it was pretty simple, so I didn't feel the need to add all that, but the possibilities are endless. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.